Hey everyone, what up? Welcome here. Man, my hair's a mess. All right. Yes, here we are. Dave, glad to have you, buddy. We're going to give everybody a chance to log in here tonight. Hi, Bill Martin. Hey, Margie and Doug. Hi, Teresa Bitters. Hey, Angie. DW is in the house. Susan Eggery's here. Hi, Susan. Scott Moran. Miriam is here. Hi, Daryl. Hey, Cheryl and Jack. First comment tonight. Nicely done. So we got Audra's here. Eric's around. Dennis and T are here. I'm assuming that's Trina. We'll see. Kuhan Luke is here. Kuhan Luke has been doing some shooting today. I have pictorial evidence of this. And let's see. Joyce Canning's logging in. Hi, Lisa Harner. Parker's here. All right. While we're waiting for a few other people to jump. Wow, we're up to 26 already. While we're waiting for a few other people to jump in, Matt Clements, what's happening, my man? I would like, if you don't mind, some feedback from this morning. Again, I have no way to get feedback. I have no idea what's happening with anything. So for those of you who were in either or both services this morning, talk to me. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you like? What did you hate? Talk to me. Hi, Carl and Beth. Hey, Jess. Jess, you're going to enjoy that black bean soup. I had some for lunch. It's awesome. So, all right. Thank you, Jess. Sermon today, I got, a few people said a few things. I'm just, again, it's such a different animal trying to do sermons on YouTube than sermons live. Gosh, it is like so different. And it's hard work. A lot harder than doing it live. I mean, you think being in front of a whole crowd full of people would be hard? No, that is way easier than trying to do this YouTube stuff. So, the sermon drive-through video. Did you guys like the drive-through video part? And good. Yeah, thanks, Beth. Teresa, love the points, but have to listen again and write them down. I was in the car. Yeah, all right. Maggie thinks she's famous now as the youngest driver in Auglaize County. That could be. So, all right. Thanks, Eric. Audra, really enjoyed it. Thanks to all who helped. Didn't fall asleep during the service. That's a plus. Congratulations, Bill. I don't know how much coffee it took to get you through that, but good. Thank you, Miriam. Drive-through video. Enjoyed that. Good. Joe Sutton is in the house, folks. Kuhan Luke. Maggie was already a star, and now she's a superstar. There you go. Teresa liked the drive-through faces. Ruth, Laura says, Ruth is my favorite Bible story. Excited for the sermon series. Did you enjoy this morning talking about, I have to keep Joseph and Ruth separate, talking about commitment. And I mean, obviously her story is all about commitment and the fact that she was committed to her mother-in-law. I did work a mother-in-law joke into the sermon. I want to know if anyone laughed at that or chuckled or anything. And still putting names, faces, Lisa. That was part of the motivation behind the drive-through video to give everybody a chance to see everybody. Hey, Nikki. Nikki, you got your name corrected too. Congratulations on that. So, all right. So, Kuhan Luke liked the mother-in-law joke. Hey, Sherry. Jess liked the joke. Great to match names and faces, Candy. Yeah, that's that. Again, that was the purpose. And yes, Audra's crying. Joe is laughing. I'm going to take that as a win, I guess. Good deal. Oh, Tim's in the house too. All right, we got 31 people here. So good. I'm glad to have you all. Tell us the joke again. I was talking about how Ruth was committed to her mother-in-law, which was Naomi. And how most people would think, oh, when it comes to your mother, sweetheart, I think we should socially distance because we can't make your mom sick. And I felt like that's something maybe too many people understood what I was talking about because that's when social distancing becomes a blessing, is when you're like, I can't go over to mother-in-law's house because, death and mayhem and stuff and COVID-19. so that was a joke. I don't know if anybody got it. I had a joke about the Beetle in there too, but again, it's so awesome because you guys are so kind to laugh at all my stupid stuff. I miss making you guys laugh. That's why I sang the song the other night and stuff. I enjoy that out of you guys. Paula enjoyed it. Great sermon. Couldn't make the drive-through, but love the idea. Yeah, and we're gonna do some stuff with shut-ins and people who couldn't get out this week. So hopefully we'll have a probably we obviously won't have as many, but we'll have a few more this week. Hopefully after this week we're gonna start having conversations about what coming back is gonna look like to actually be live again. Of course, Teresa, you're close to your mother-in-law, but of course you're the sweetest person God ever made on this earth, so I'm not at all surprised to learn that. Audra's still laughing. Excellent. Different camera angles. That got mixed reviews. Some people really liked that. Some people didn't. I'd say it's about 50-50. So next week, I think we're not going to do the camera angles for the sermon and see what that does. Because that was, it's funny, Eric loved it. A few other people loved it. A few other people were like, do we have to keep doing that? It makes me airsick or whatever. So I will say that's a tremendous amount of work to do it that way. So I think this week we may go straight forward with the sermon, but it was just an experiment to kind of see, and given how mixed the reviews were, I don't know that that's something that I want to keep trying to do. So we'll see. But that definitely got mixed reviews on that one. Let's see here. All right, Matt Clements is laughing. Audra's giving me an amen. Choir always has my back. I have a T-shirt to that effect. The jokes are better than the singing. I ain't really saying a whole lot, Joe. I mean, honestly, not saying a lot. Totally agree with Eric. That added a sense of being in church. The different angles, that was what I was going for. And again, very mixed responses to that. But so Angie Myers working on it. We'll let you know tomorrow on that. Ange, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Sorry, I missed something in the chat here. Tell me what you're talking about, Ange. Lisa agrees with me that Teresa Bitters is the sweetest person on earth. I really don't think that's opinion. I think that's fact. So Matt Clements agrees with Joe that jokes are better than the singing. Again, not saying a whole lot. Beth Reedy liked the camera angles. Do you preach the sermon each time at each angle? No. What I do is I write the sermon out, which is typically what I do, and then I put lines in the sermon. So what I do at each angle, I preach those segments. And then I piece all the segments together. So those are actually however many cuts there are. There's that many segments that I got to piece together and make sure they all fit. So no, I don't preach the whole thing at each angle. It's pieces, and it's tough. So all right. Teresa is now hugging Lisa. Not that I'm surprised to learn this. Cool Hand Luke says sermon notes on the screen are a plus. That I have received no negative feedback from. So that, depending on if the sermon justifies that will probably stay. Yeah, Joe, probably cut down the number of angles and stuff. Maybe cut it down to one. I haven't decided. We'll see. Hey, Cheryl. Glad to have you. It's okay. We haven't even started yet. I'm still doing my intro. Angie. Oh, shut-ins. Thank you, Angie. I lost where that conversation thread was going. Yes, context with shut-ins. I've already heard from Carol and Ray Seide, and so they're one of the people I'm going to stop and see. And any of the rest of you want to contact, please feel free to do that. Cheryl liked it. Liked the different angles. Props to me. Sure, I say something nice about you, Teresa. Now you're giving me props. I see how that works. So yeah, it looks like it's seamless. It is not. It is a jumbled mess. If you watch the raw footage of doing the sermon that way, it is a mess. You cannot follow it at all. No one could edit that but me, because I'm the only one that knows what it's supposed to say. And it's a mess. So, but sounds like too much work for little reward, Matt. You and I are on the same page. Exactly what I'm thinking, because it probably takes me well over an hour of extra work to get that thing to look that way. So that's yeah, that's a lot of work, and I don't know that I need to be there's other things I could be doing than, editing video for 2 hours a week. So, yep. So, Teresa, and the preaching angles. Thank you, Teresa. Joe liked it. Kim says, make it easier on yourself. There's enough just getting this accomplished. You are correct, Kim. And Joyce agrees with Kim. Hey, Daryl and Jean. Hey, everybody. I want to publicly apologize to Daryl and Jean. They were sweet enough to come by. I think it was Friday, and record some stuff for next Sunday, and your moron pastor deleted it. So I'm hoping it's backed up on the stick that I don't have. I'm going to find out tomorrow, but somehow I deleted that with the stuff from last week because the computer in the sanctuary will only hold so much, so I got to keep video moved off of it. And when I was deleting stuff from this week I didn't need, I dumped their stuff too, and I just feel horrible about that. And they were gracious enough to come in this week and record it again. But, yeah, I was not real happy to find that out. So, thank you, Candy. Trinity turned a message to a message. Well, I hope that's the result. Sherry agrees with Kim. Kim said it well. Yep, I think Kim and I are on the same page. Love the prayer with the church in the background. That was odd. That was like 10 o'clock on Friday night. I went outside to record that, and I stood under the streetlight thinking, social distancing, and it's 10 o'clock. No, there was like a parade of cars going by, and I was trying to get that so I didn't have cars, and I waited out there forever. Cars never stopped going by at 10 o'clock on Friday night, even though we're socially distancing and quarantined and whatever else. So nobody was following that on Friday night. So I'm like, well, we're just going to pray with cars in the background because that's just how I roll. So I was trying to get that out, but it wasn't going to happen. But I did like doing the prayer from outside, even though I about froze half to death. Did you notice I had some clothing changes? The shirt I had on in the sermon was not the shirt I had on in anything else. That's because there was about 2 days in between those things. So, yeah. So Tim has all kind of wardrobe changes and goofy stuff. So, thank you, Jane. You're too kind. Thank you. Margie, you have wonderful meal. Tell her she looked great in the drive-thru. I'm not sure we're at there, Miriam. Teresa gave Trina an amen, turning a mess into a message. Yep. Jess, this is all kinds of new, and I keep saying that, especially even about this, all kinds of new. Yes, if you think about where we started this just a month ago to where we are now, it's been quite a process, and we're talking about what we want to do going forward. I had a conversation with Kurt Eversman about what we could do with this going forward, and hopefully we're going to be talking about getting back to quasi normal here soon. Do the prayer during the run. There'd be a lot of heavy breathing if that was the case, Bill. Prayer was very meaningful, and visual aids are the best, and I agree with that. So, all right. Oh, Doug's mother, yes, Edna. It was great to see her too, and Doug went through twice. Doug went through in photographic form, and then he went through again in actual human form. So that was great for Doug to be there twice, and Margie and Edna too. So, all right. Thank you all for your feedback. Appreciate you taking time to just talk with me about that a little bit. We're probably going to axe the camera angles, at least cut them down, the number of them, for the sermon next week, just because it's just easier. It's just a lot of work editing that together. But, again, we're trying to figure out what we can do and what needs to happen and all this stuff. And I guess on with the show. This is it. All right. So we are going to begin here with your good friend of mine, Joseph. We're in Genesis 39. We're going to start with verse 11. And we'll probably pick up the pace, because at the pace we're going, we're going to be on Joseph until Christmas. I don't know if that's going to happen tonight because we got a couple of segments here. But I'm sorry, I said Genesis 39:11, didn't I? We did that one last night, didn't we? Yeah, we're at Genesis 40. My bad, Genesis 40. Genesis 40, verse 1, that's where we are. Just real quick, Joseph, from Genesis 37, was sold into slavery by his brothers because they thought he was a jerk, and honestly, from what we read, they were probably right. They sold him into slavery. He had a transformation as he was being taken down into Egypt. He got to Potiphar's house. He capitalized on what he learned, got to be in charge, unfortunately also caught the attention of Potiphar's wife, who was a predator, and she got him in trouble because he would not give in to her requests, we'll call them, and ended up in jail because she accused him of something. And even though there's at least a possibility that Potiphar did not believe her, he still had to do something. Yet he set Joseph up very well in the prison, and God was working through all of this to prepare a champion to face off against a famine. And so that's where we are. So Joseph is currently in upper class prison. He's in the prison of the king stuff. He's in what we would refer to today as a white collar crime. He's not in with the real hardcore criminals and in the maximum security kind of thing. So he's sort of in a house arrest kind of situation. He's running the show. The warden at the jail really likes him because he put Joseph in charge, and Joseph is real good at being in charge, and made the prison run effectively. Made sure all the prisoners, got fed and taken care of, and contributed, and organized work, organized resources, took care of all these things from inside the prison. So he was there for a while, and obviously he was the guy to know because he was the guy in charge. Was sort of like the senior member or something. I'm not sure how to say that. But Genesis 40, the first three words are sometime later. How much time later? I have no idea, but some period of time has passed. So Joseph has had time to establish himself. He is working very hard to make things function in the prison, taking care of the prisoners, taking care of the warden, just making a nice situation for everybody. And so in the midst of this came a couple more white-collar criminals. And let's find out who they are. So this is Genesis chapter 40, verse 1. Sometime later, again, we don't know how long, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and chief baker offended their royal master. This is one of those places where I want to, and I say this all the time. I wish the Bible would give us some more details. What exactly would a cupbearer and a baker do that would be offensive? Spilled wine? Burn the bread? Not make my favorite cupcakes? I don't know. I don't know what exactly they did. But Pharaoh decided he was upset with these two guys, and he sent them to the king's prison. Proof that Pharaoh had very particular taste in wine and very particular taste in his pastries. And can I get an amen from anybody who's in here now? When I say filled stick, I don't mean glazed, right? When I say jelly filled, I don't mean custard filled. Can I get an amen for the congregation? When I say cake donut, I don't mean baked. Whatever. Because we're all real particular with our donuts. And somebody jump in the comments and tell me that, hey, we don't mess with donuts. Yeah. Pharaohs be crazy. No, Kohen Luke, this is donuts we're talking about. We don't mess around with donuts. So, all right. So whatever happened, you got Nikki. Not surprised to see Nikki's name jump up there. Happy to get on. Hi, Linda. Welcome. And thanks for being the cover girl for our Awaken service today on the thumbnail. That was great. And could they have slept with his wife? I don't know. I guess that would have been offensive, but it wouldn't have anything to do with pastries, but who knows? But whatever's going on here, something happened. Pharaoh's mad at him, so they go to jail. I sincerely doubt that they slept with Pharaoh's wife because I think that doesn't seem like something you live through. I think the only reason Joseph lived through it is Potiphar didn't believe it. So, all right, so he's angry with these two officials. He threw them into prison. They put them in the prison where Joseph was, in the palace of the captain of the guard. Please hear this sentence, my friends. The sentence says, and he put them in prison where Joseph was, in the palace of the captain of the guard. Was that word palace? So Pharaoh put them in prison where Joseph was, in the palace of the captain of the guard. Is that screaming prison to anyone? Anybody, visit the Auglaize County Jail and say, dang, this place is a palace? I don't know that anyone has ever said that. I have not been in Auglaize County Prison, but I was in Allen County Prison a couple times visiting inmates who were there, in fact, quite a few times. And I had no indication that that was a palace and would never have mistaken it for one. So, okay, so Candy says house. Again, house, not exactly what we would call prison. Again, prison in the palace is not bad, Cool Hand Luke. That is true, my friend. So if that's where the captain of the guard lived, if that was his house, and that's also where the prison was located, again, I'm not thinking dank, dark, small, yucky prison cells. Okay, that's again not the indication I'm getting. And so he's in this palace of the captain of the guard, and under Joseph's command, and everything's going great. Okay, so after some time, we already read that the cupbearer, basically the bartender and the baker end up in the prison. Verse 3, they remained in prison for quite some time. So that's the second indication we get that some time has passed. So again, I don't know. Potiphar, Laura, Potiphar was not the captain of the guard. He was called an official. What was his word? Oh my gosh, no, you're right. Potiphar was the captain of the guard. Wow. I had not put that together. You are correct. Potiphar was the captain of the guard. The royal master Pharaoh put them in prison where Joseph was, in the palace of the captain of the guard. Wow. So I mean, if you really want to stretch that a little bit, Potiphar could have been the one running the prison he was in. Dang, you're blowing my mind there a little bit. Yeah, bonus. Hey, everybody tell Laura she's awesome. Everybody get in the chat right now. Tell her she's awesome, because that got right past me. That's good. Nice job, Laura. So maybe the reason he got put in charge in the prison was because he had been in charge in the house, and now he's basically in the same place. He's just shielded from his predatory wife. That's very interesting. How about that, Laura? Nice catch. All right. So anyway, so maybe Joseph didn't move as far as we thought. And so now he's there working. And so they had been in prison for quite some time. There you go. Good job, guys. Verse 4. So basically, he's still in Potiphar's house. I mean, at least we could leave that there. Eric, good job, buddy. I was hoping to see your name pop up there. So, all right. So they remained in prison for quite some time. And Joyce is confused. Joyce, if you're confused, ask a question. I sincerely doubt that if that's, gosh, now you guys got me all messed up. I sincerely doubt that Potiphar lived in the prison. But I imagine what that means is that wherever the captain of the guard, which was Potiphar, wherever he was living, probably would have had a separate section where some of the prisoners were kept. And you can imagine that if you're important enough to be the captain of the guard, you're not living in a shack. So this white-collar prison that he's in probably would have been connected, or maybe been under the control of Potiphar. So when Potiphar took him down to the warden, he could have told the warden, hey, you're getting a winner in this guy. I mean, that very well could happen. And the warden and Potiphar may very well know each other. That's very interesting. Maybe that's why Potiphar put him in that prison, because he knew he could keep his thumb on his situation. Make sure he was taken care of. I mean, Potiphar could have been watching out for Joseph for a long time. Yes, Pastor Tim is now off track. Lesson extended till Easter of 2021. All right, I'm going to try to not let that happen, but I'm not promising nothing. All right, so they remained in prison for quite some time. So again, second indication we get that some amount of time has passed. And the captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, who was looking after them. So again, perhaps it was Potiphar. I don't know. So the bartender and the chief baker were assigned to Joseph to look after them. So I mean, look, the guy who mixed the wine and the guy who baked the pastries are now under Joseph's command. I mean, everybody may have started eating and living better at that point because, I mean, that's really probably the only skill these two guys had. So now it's pastries and wine for everyone. I mean, life might have just got a whole lot better. Maybe this is Potiphar giving him an attaboy. I mean, here's two guys who could really do some cool stuff for you. See how far we can run down this rabbit hole once we take that first step. That's awesome. Okay, so all right, no more tangent. I'm being focused now, being good. So they so the bartender and the chief baker are in the prison. They're now under Joseph's command. Everybody's eating donuts and drinking wine and thinking life is good. So now we're to verse 5. When they were in prison, Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker each had a dream one night, and each dream had its own meaning. Okay. So something new is about to happen. We've not experienced interpretation of dreams yet. Now we know that Joseph was a dreamer earlier in his life because you remember he had a dream about the sun, moon, and stars bowing down to him, and then and before that it was the bundles of grain were bowing down to him. So Joseph knew a little something about being a dreamer, and part of that dreamer skill that he had is part of what got in trouble, and got his brothers mad at him and ended up in this predicament in the first place. So these two guys had a dream. Now, verse 6. I'm going to read this verse to you, and then I'm going to ask you this question after I read this verse. What does this show that Joseph has learned? Okay, I'm going to read verse 6 to you, and after I read it, that's going to be my question. So get your fingers ready to type. I want to see some answers. What does this verse show us that Joseph has learned? Verse 6. When Joseph saw them the next morning, he noticed they both looked upset. What has Joseph learned? I made a big deal about this the first night because I knew this moment was coming. I made a big deal out of this because I wanted to show how far he's come. What does this verse tell us that Joseph has learned? When Joseph saw them the next morning, he noticed that they both looked upset. What does that tell us that Joseph has learned? Something he clearly did not know back in Genesis 37. What does he now know? Verse 6 says, when Joseph saw them the next morning, he noticed they both looked upset. Self-awareness is a big thing he's picked up. And not only self-awareness, but environmental awareness. He knew the people around him. And Bill learned to care about others. I mean, I really pushed this far to almost to the point of making fun of Joseph, and that he just had a complete lack of awareness when he's like, hey guys, we all made these bundles of grain and your bundles of grain all bowed down to mine, and never had an indication that might tick some people off. Okay. Awareness, thinking of others, not himself, noticing it, others' feelings other than his own. Observe, you guys got it. Perfect. So if he's able to now, in all this time that's passed, and again, we don't have an indication how long that was, but it was an extended period. He began to be aware of other people's feelings. That's right, Tim. He began to be aware of other people's feelings, something he showed zero capacity for back in Genesis 37. So he's now learned the value of paying attention to other people, something he was, to say he wasn't very good at it before would be a mild understatement. He's no longer, that's right, Cheryl, he's no longer self-centered. He's no longer, only concerned about what's going on in himself. For him to come to work and look at these two guys who are probably his two most recent prisoner assignments and say, I've just been around these guys too long, but they seem upset today. And he's going to go ask them about that. And clearly he's now became a little more intuitive and showing a little more empathy, Miriam. That's right. And Amy, that's right. Awareness of other people, something he showed no capacity for back in Genesis 37. So clearly the guy's learning, he's growing, he's, showing skills he hadn't had before. Okay. So he went up to these two guys, and he is growing as a person, Eric. Clearly he is, and is making good progress. So he went up to them, and he said, "Why do you look so worried today?" Friends, Pharaoh threw them in prison because he was offended by them in some way. I have no idea what they did, but Pharaoh wasn't enamored with it. So I've never offended a Pharaoh before, but I've offended plenty of people to know that if you offend powerful people, you got something to worry about. So Joseph could have went up and said, Pharaoh's going to get over it, which we know for one of the two guys he's not. But he didn't say that. He gave them a chance to tell their own story. This question, why do you look so worried today? Instead of him saying, straighten up and do your job, or bake those pastries and mix that wine, or whatever, by him saying, tell me what's going on, again, shows compassion. He's showing compassion to these two guys that really he hasn't even known that long, because they came halfway through this extended period of time. So they came along, and Joseph is showing compassion to these two guys. Wanted to hear their story. Tell me what's happening. Showing genuine compassion and care for these guys. Verse 8. And they replied, we both had dreams last night, but no one could tell us what they mean. Okay. Now here's where things are going to get interesting, because, well, let's find out what happened. So they each had a nightmare, and they're upset by it. And I have been a person who has struggled with nightmares most of my adult life, and just I know what that feels like. That's a bad place to be, because I've dealt with that for a long time. And sometimes it's better than others, depending on what's going on in life. But it can get to be really a tiring thing to, be having these nightmares every night, and you dread going to bed because you know something crazy is going to happen in your dreams. So I know what that feels like. I know a number of you probably do too. And so that's a difficult thing. So so they want this explained. I want to know why this terrifying dream has happened. I want you to look at Joseph's response. And again, same question. What does this response show us that Joseph has learned? This one sentence, he says, interpreting dreams is God's business. Now, for all intents and purposes, the bartender and the chief baker are both Egyptian, I would guess. We're not told anything different, so we have to guess they were Egyptian. I guess it's not exclusive that foreign people could work in Pharaoh's, Pharaoh's place. But we're going to find out with Joseph. When Joseph starts getting promoted and gets into leadership, he looks so Egyptian that even his own brothers don't recognize him. So anybody who's going to be a leadership in Pharaoh's cabinet, I don't know what word to use, but they're going to be very Egyptian. So these two Egyptians probably would have not, they would have been pantheists. We talked about that before, and believed in many gods. So for Joseph to say, interpreting dreams is capital G gods, meaning the God that we know, that's God's business. What does that show us that Joseph has learned? And by this, I mean, he doesn't say, well, let me tell you a little something about dreams based on my experience. I had this dream once about grain that was bound to other grain, and I had a dream about the sun, moon, and stars, and they were all bound down to me. It was kind of awesome. Prison, even the palace prison has humbled him, Cool Hand Luke. That is exactly right. And the idea here is that I feel like this statement gives a lot of credit to God, and I think the reason it seems that way is because it does. I mean, that's very creative, right? But he's giving God a lot of credit. Yeah, he credits God, not himself. Exactly, Cheryl. And I think that what is happening here is he's starting to realize where power comes from. Power comes from the Lord, and that's humility, Matt, certainly. Teresa, he's going to turn control over to God, and we're about to see that happen right in the text. So, yep. Dreams are not always about him, Tim. I hadn't thought of that one, but that's very good. And, Kim, he has a relationship with God. He's giving credit to God where credit is due. I think that Joseph is realizing a couple of you put humility. Matt put humility. That's exactly right, because when he was on his high horse back in Genesis 37, and he's had two bad experiences now. One ended up a slave. The second ended up in prison. Yet where's he at? He's living in a palace, or a palace prison, so to speak, and he's running the show. And he's connected to some of the most powerful people who were there. So, he is clearly giving credit to that for God. He's not saying, well, I'll interpret your dream because I'm in charge. He doesn't say anything like that. Joseph of Genesis 37 probably would have said that, or at least thought that. He may not have articulated it that clearly, but he would have thought that because he thought, I can do anything because I'm the man. And clearly he wasn't. So he's giving credit to God. So clearly in all of this, Joseph is starting to see God's hand. And as the story continues, we're going to see Joseph give a lot of credit to God. There's a great line coming that will come near the end of the study where Joseph gives all the glory to God. It's amazing, but it's Bible. So of course it's amazing. So, all right, good job, guys. All right, so interpreting dreams is God's business, Joseph said. Go ahead and tell me your dreams. Let's talk it out. So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. In my dream, he said, I saw a grapevine in front of me, and the vine had 3 branches that began to bud and blossom, and soon produced clusters of ripe grapes. Of course, the cupbearer, the wine mixer, had a dream about grapes. Anybody shocked to find this out? Not exactly shocking. Verse 11. I was holding Pharaoh's wine cup in my hand, so I took a cluster of grapes and squeezed the juice into the cup, and I placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. Okay? He basically dreamed he had his old job back. Verse 12. This is what the dream means. And again, through the Lord giving him the ability to interpret these things, Joseph is going back to rely on God to speak to that. Joseph said, the 3 branches represent 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift you up and restore you to your position as his chief cupbearer. So whatever you did to offend Pharaoh, he's going to get over it. And then, okay, so there's the interpretation. This sounds like good news. I mean, obviously. And verse 14. And please remember me and do me a favor when things go well for you. Mention me to Pharaoh so he might let me out of this place. All right, let's stop there. What has Joseph done to be worthy of this kind of request? Often when this story is interpreted, the interpretation is he interpreted the dream. He was able to tell the bartender that, this is what the dream meant. And because of that, Joseph felt like, okay, I've done you a favor. Now you do me one. I'm going to offer an alternative theory on this. What if what Joseph had done for the bartender was take care of him in the prison? What if that's what he'd done? Because again, the bartender and the baker had both been in there for a time, and he had taken care of them. He had shown them great respect. That's true. Cool Hand Luke says that's why Pharaoh put him in prison. Fresh hand squeezed grapes. That's right. COVID-19, man. Social distancing. There you go. But what if what Joseph had done was invested in these men? Maybe taught them to not do whatever had upset Pharaoh. Again, whatever that was. Taught them how to deal, how to work, how to do these things. That could have been the investment that Joseph had made. And he says, hey, man, I've taken care of you. Can you do me a solid? When you get back in your spot, because God says that's where you're going, would you put in the good word for me? That doesn't seem so out of line for somebody who'd taken care of you while you were there. So Joseph helped relieve the baker's suffering of being tormented by the dream. I'm going to say a big negative on that one. The bartender, he does. The baker, we're about to find out, he does not. And again, I believe that the purpose of the baker in this story is to help us know that Joseph wasn't just going around telling everybody, hey, things are going to go okay for you. And when you get out, give me the good word, because he does not do that for the baker. Yes. When the cupbearer gets out, we would hope that the cupbearer would remember Joseph and realize, yeah, Laura, okay, yeah, that's okay. But yes, I would say that if it was me and I was the bartender, I would be very uplifted by this. And my first thing, as Kim says, my first thing when I get out would be like, Pharaoh, you got a very talented guy down in the prison. And Potiphar likes him, and everybody down there likes him, and he seems pretty bright. Might want to invest in this guy a little bit. So that's right. So yeah. I mean that's clearly what it is. So, and he says, "Do me a solid and remember me." We're going to find out later that he don't do that. So now, verse 15. And this is what he says: "Tell Pharaoh to let me out or help me out, help a brother out." That's right, Cool and Luke. Verse 15. This is Joseph still speaking. "For I was kidnapped from my homeland, the land of the Hebrews, and now I'm here in prison, but I did nothing to deserve it." So he's still carrying the burden. He may be making the best of the situation, but he still ain't happy about it. And notice, the bitterness is still there. So it's not like God gave him amnesia and made him forget all the bad stuff that happened. And I don't ever want anything that I say to make you think that, well, Joseph was fine with this. Clearly, he's not. And the palace may not be the horrible prison that we sometimes envision, but it's still not ideal. What did Joseph want to do? He wants to go home. But God had another idea. Okay, so after Joseph kind of fills in the bartender and kind of brings him up to speed in his situation and they talk a little bit, the baker, who also was down there for offending Pharaoh for some reason, verse 16, when the chief baker saw that Joseph had given the first dream such a positive interpretation, he said to Joseph, "Hold up, dude. Why don't you interpret my dream too?" So here's my dream. I had a dream too. In my dream, there were 3 baskets of white pastries stacked on my head. The top basket contained all kinds of pastries for Pharaoh, but the birds came and ate them from the basket on my head. Okay, so I'm walking around with donuts on my head, and birds were eating them. Okay. And the baker said, he was nice to the cupbearer. Here we go. So here's Joseph's response. Again, he doesn't say it. He doesn't repeat himself, but still going by the premise he put out earlier that dream interpretation is God's prerogative and it's something that God does. Verse 18. "This is what your dream means here, donut maker." Joseph said, "The 3 baskets also represent 3 days. This is what the dream means," Joseph told him. 3 baskets represent 3 days. 3 days from now, Pharaoh will lift you up and impale your body on a pole. The birds will come and peck away at your flesh. Wow. I think there's no interpretation where that sounds like good news. I don't know what the donut maker did or the baker did that was so bad, but this is not going to go well. So here we go. Things are not good for the baker, and so what do we learn here? I think this goes back to who said it. Let me look over here and see who said it. I forget who said it, but somebody said about. Oh, geez, I missed it. Let me scroll up here. Okay, yeah, Kim said it. Basically, now you got two things that are going on here. Joseph has given 2 dream interpretations. We get the chance now to find out if these 2 interpretations are going to work, because maybe Pharaoh is about to have a party. Maybe Pharaoh's just going to pardon everybody. Joseph says no. For no reason that anybody's going to have explained, it's going to go well for one of you and not for the other. And Bill says sometimes ignorance is bliss. Yes. Sometimes if you don't want to know, you probably shouldn't ask. So, yeah, the baker looks and says, can we go best out of 3? That's right, Quinn, Luke. Okay, so verse 20. Pharaoh's birthday happened to be 3 days later. Who knew? I mean, do I think that Joseph knew what Pharaoh's birthday was? No. I don't think that Joseph could have known that information. I don't know that anybody's down in the prison going, hey, let's have a party. Or maybe the baker was like, hey, I'm going to bake a cake for my favorite Pharaoh or anything. I doubt that. Tim says maybe the Pharaoh found out that the baker was truly responsible for what he and the cupbearer were accused of, so he freed the cupbearer and executed the baker. Very well could have. We're not given any details of what either of them were accused of other than offending Pharaoh. So that, yes, that interpretation could be very well, maybe the baker was the ringleader or whatever. Who knows? So 3 days later, again, I sincerely doubt that Joseph could have known this, was Pharaoh's birthday. He prepared a banquet for all of his officials and staff. So he has everybody there, and 2 of his officials and staff who were in prison, the chief baker and the cupbearer, he summoned them from the prison to join the other officials. So I think the baker burnt the Pharaoh's buns. Whatever it was, he ain't gonna do it again. So he summoned these 2 men from the prison to come up there and join him. And right there in front of everybody, he restored the bartender, the chief cupbearer. He restored him to his former position. So he said, come on up here and squeeze the grapes and hand me the cup. But Pharaoh impaled the chief baker just as Joseph had predicted when he interpreted his dream. Pharaoh decided he was going to show some power. Life or death rests in Pharaoh's hands. One of these men lived, one of these men died, all at the whim of the Pharaoh. So there's a couple of things that's going on here. The reason that the Bible includes this detail about these 2 men is, first of all, it establishes that Joseph and God are in tune with each other. To be able to make a call like this, that not only the time that it was going to happen, but what was going to happen, is pretty amazing. My argument here that what we're seeing is that God had given Joseph the ability to vision, to think about the future, to think about things that were going to be happening, weeks and even years in the future. This skill of being able to vision and live into a preferred future is going to come back huge in Joseph preparing to cancel the famine. It's going to come back in a major, major way because planning and record keeping and visioning is exactly the skills that God is going to use to save all the people from the famine. So, and you can see that here. We also see that what a dangerously impulsive man the Pharaoh happens to be. Because, almost like he flipped a coin and one man lived and one man died based on how Pharaoh was feeling. I can't even imagine having a party where a part of the entertainment is we're going to kill somebody. That just, even if the guy deserved it, we don't take convicted murderers and strap them to an electric chair for the 4th of July. We don't do that. That's cruel and awful. So Pharaoh is clearly an extreme man that you did not want to cross. So part of this is also to set the stage that we know what kind of a risk that Joseph was running to go in front of Pharaoh, because that's where he's going to end up in the story. He's going to end up in front of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh was a tyrant and somebody not to be taken lightly. So, okay. So, the cupbearer got his old job and his old life back. The baker was killed. What did Joseph ask the cupbearer to do? Okay. I've taken care of you. When the time comes, I'd like for you to put the word in for me. Verse 23. Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, however, forgot all about Joseph, never giving him another thought. The guy who had cared for him when he was in prison, made sure things were taken care of, the guy he had worked for, the guy who had given him hope by this wonderful interpretation of the dream of the vines, went back to his life and forgot all about it. Now, we're gonna stop here, but I'm gonna read one more phrase. Genesis 41, verse 1. 2 full years later. 2 full years later. Joseph, who was ready to get out, ready to be done, ready to escape, ready to have the bartender put in a good word for him so that Pharaoh would be merciful to him, languished in this prison for 2 more years. Again, the conditions, may not have been all that bad, and they may not have been, all that difficult, and he may not have suffered all that much, but he was still stuck in prison for 2 years. Where were you at in the spring of 2018? That's where you would be till now. It's a long time. I wasn't even the pastor here yet at that point. Dylan Stoss was still here. I wasn't even the pastor yet. I wasn't even sitting in this chair. And that's how long Joseph sat in prison. That's tough. And we can ask ourselves, why did God allow that to happen? And we'll probably get into a little bit of this in the opening tomorrow. But apparently, Joseph wasn't ready yet. Certainly, the famine was not upon them yet. And how quickly we forget, Cheryl. That's true. And it is a crock candy. Don't let anybody kid you. But Joseph was forgotten. So he stayed down there doing his thing for 2 more years. Joseph was doing more than overnight chili. Yes, he was, because it was not overnight. It was over 2 years. He was in this prison. So, one of the things I'll say here, and we'll probably have this conversation again before we finish with Joseph. If anybody ever had a reason to be bitter, isn't it this man? I mean, he had every right to, because he'd been sold out by his brothers. He had not been prepared to face the world by his father. The Ishmaelite traders sold him to Potiphar, who sold him out because his wife lied about him. He got in there working for what now we found out could have been Potiphar. Doing basically a different kind of job, but still a slave to Potiphar, even though he was, probably in a decent place. He took care of guys. One guy finally got out, and all Joseph said is, "Hey, put in the good word for him." The guy forgot him. This is a guy who had every reason to have a chip on his shoulder, to be angry. But he clearly didn't go that way. Because as we see here, he showed compassion to these 2 guys, saying, "Guys, what's up? What's going on?" And sure, it was in God's time and not Joseph's time, Tim. I absolutely agree with that. But that doesn't mean that Joseph was terribly thrilled with it, just like none of us are thrilled with it. And, sometimes when we read these Bible stories, you have to remember we're only reading the exciting parts, like any movie. We're only seeing the exciting parts. When Joseph goes to face off against the famine, we see that. When Joseph is sold into slavery, we see that. 2 years pass, and 4 words. 2 full years later. Okay, what happened during those 2 years? I have no idea. But Joseph was down there for 2 years doing something, taking care of stuff in the prison. But we're sort of fast forward through that because there just weren't enough scrolls to write it all down. But don't think that sometimes these biblical characters didn't go through seasons of drought. Poor Joseph languished in this for 2 years. That's right, Cheryl. We think this COVID stay-at-home order is a long time. It's been, a little over 30 days, a little over a month now. And we're all going stir crazy. So, yeah. So, many of you are dealing with things in life that are difficult for you. And just know that even though the Bible's one big story about the restoration of God, just know that some of that restoration was a long time in coming. Just like for Joseph, it was a long time in coming. So, yes, cool hand, Luke. Joseph had to feel absolutely abandoned by God, but he somehow still trusted and leaned on God. How? This experience brought him closer to God. And yes, Matt, it is hard to understand how he managed to do this. But understand, what else did he have? If he, was drug off by the Ishmaelite traders back in Genesis 37, and he decided his life was over, the famine's going to destroy the world. That is literally what's going to happen. Joseph had to keep fighting. He had to believe that something was going to come from this. He had to. And he had to hang on to that, which is the lesson that we need to take from this. What do we need to hang on to? What do we need to be prepared for? Because there may come a time when there's going to be a challenge, or there's going to be, who knows what come along. And we got to be ready for that. And sometimes right, Cam, sometimes we only see that through hindsight. Teresa says Joseph allowed God to work in Joseph's heart. Clearly, that's what's going on here, because Joseph would never have been able to do this on his own. Not from where he was in Genesis 37. There's no way. This is a process of growth and a whole bunch of dangerous prayers that he had to say and risks he had to take. And that's what got him through. So the whole world is going to end up being very thankful that he did, because he's the one that's going to deliver the people out of the mess that's coming. So, all right, very good. You guys got any more questions about Joseph? Anything else you want to say? How about these worksheets? Anybody still working on these? Yeah, Bill, that song could have, by Laura Story, I know the song you're talking about, could very well have been about Joseph. In fact, I don't know that it wasn't. So, yeah, Cheryl, he maintained his connection to God, and that's how he was sustained through some of this mess he was going through. And that's right. The challenges he was facing, instead of wrecking his faith, actually strengthened it. And that's a pretty good lesson for us to hang on to, because sometimes adversity makes us abandon what we know to be true rather than embrace it. And that's not a good place to be. So, all right, guys, keep working on these worksheets. See if you can get these filled out. Continue thinking about what's going on here, and because I'd like for this to become a meaningful experience for you. And I hope you guys are still working on that. So, all right, my friends. Anything else for tonight? We'll pick up tomorrow night with Genesis 41. Matt Clements is speaking the truth here tonight, folks. A lot easier said than done, and that is for darn sure. It's a heck of a lot easier said than done. Still praying about relational to be starved and praying about it. Yep. Yeah, the line I'm struggling with in that worksheet is personal. I don't have anything on either line. So I'm still working on that one. So, all right, very good. Well, I hope you guys continue working on that. Yeah, and that's why we have experiences like this one, to be honest with you. We're all going through a challenging time where people are getting laid off and losing their jobs and dealing with stuff like that. And we need experiences like this to encourage us to stay strong. And that's why we're here. And that's why we're having this experience, and why we're on here every night to have this conversation, or at least have the offer of a conversation, because we are here for mutual support, to remind each other of, better times have been here and better times will be here. So, all righty. Well, I hope you guys had a great day today. I hope you got to do a little bit outside and enjoy the weather a little bit. It's supposed to be 35 in the morning. That sounds fun, doesn't it? But better days are coming. BLT meeting going to be tomorrow night. I would appreciate all your prayers for that. One of the conversations we're going to have is about what kind of plan we're going to have for returning to church services, and how we want to do that, and some feedback and ideas that we have. And if any of you would like to chime in on that, drop me an email or a text or something, and let me know your thoughts. So, all right. Well, all right. Well, 35 of you. We had over 40 at one point. Stuck this out, so I appreciate you being here. If you do me a favor and leave me a like on this, click that thumbs up. In order to do that, you have to close the live chat for just a second and click that thumbs up. And that helps YouTube or Wayne Street's YouTube channel to get more traction in the search if we start getting likes on videos. So if you would click that like, I appreciate it. And some of you are doing that, so thank you. So I love all you too. I love you all very much. I hope you guys all have a great night. Go get him tomorrow and whatever that's going to mean for you. Go do good for somebody. And whether it be your family or your neighbor or whatever, you guys are all great. I appreciate you being here. Plan is to be back together here tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. We'll continue the story of Joseph and just keep working our way through this. So everybody have a great night. I love you all. And go wash your hands.